The Cedric Maxwell podcast is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
All right, it's another episode of the Cedric Maxwell podcast. He is Cedric Maxwell. I am Josue Pavone, and we have a very, very special guest here on the podcast. Making his debut on the Cedric Maxwell podcast, Spurs legend Sean Elliott, Spurs champion legend. His number hangs in the rafters in San Antonio, man. Sean Elliott, welcome to the show, man. It's great to have you.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. Anything for Cedric, boy. I grew up watching this man play. You know what I mean?
I got to hear stories.
And I didn't like the Celtics, boy. I just didn't like you guys because you were always beating my 76ers. It was always a good matchup, and I was a big Dr. J fan, Mo Cheeks, and yeah, you know, the Celtics, they were my nemesis team.
Oh my God.
It was out of respect, though. It was out of respect.
Wow, I find it hard you saying that, but boy, you told me something. I'm gonna get right to it because it's stuck in my mind for probably a couple of months now. San Antonio's playing Boston in Boston, and you talked about the first pick in the draft. And could you just go back over what you told me, because it stuck with me? You're like, if he goes to another NBA team, he is going to be very good. If he comes to the Spurs, he's going to be
a Hall of Famer, and maybe the greatest of all time.
Wow.
You know why I say that, though? You just look at the history of our player development. I mean, you go down the line, you can start with David Robinson and Tim Duncan, you know, obvious number one picks, and you have the raw materials already there, the talent and the drive. But look a little farther down. Look at Tony Parker at 29. Look at Manu Ginobili at 50-something when we picked him. Look at Kawhi Leonard at 15.
wow.
All those guys, Hall of Famers. Look at what we did with DeJounte Murray at 29. He ended up being an all-star before we traded him to Atlanta. So we've been, these last 4 years or so, we've been picking at the bottom of the draft, and it's a byproduct of having a lot of good years. But we've turned that talent into something. And, you know, I just feel like we have the best player development in the league. And I feel like we have the best system, and we have culture. You know what I'm talking about, Cedric. We have culture here. Not every team has culture. When you think about organizations that have culture, you think about the Spurs, think about the Miami Heat. Then you have to start stretching a little bit for teams that continue to do things the right way year after year after year, and they stick to their principles instead of, you know, switching coaches after 2 or 3 years because they don't get it done. You know, switching out players, giving up on young players, which is maybe my biggest pet peeve that happens around the league. You draft a guy that's 19 years old, and 2 or 3 years later, you're getting rid of him because he hadn't led you to the championship. I mean, give me a break. And so, you know, we just have stability here. We have a lot of guys that he can, you know, fall back on and talk to. You know, there's David, Timmy, Manu is a consultant with the team. He's always around. And so those guys are going to always be around to lend advice, be there for him if he, you know, ever reaches out or he needs anything. And I just didn't see the rest of the teams that were around and that had a chance to get him have those type of resources, that type of track record.
One of the things.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Josue.
No, I was going to say real quick. I'm really glad you said that, because when I found out we all found out when San Antonio was going to have the number one pick, I thought, you know what? It's been a while. You know, it's been about 20 years since they had a pick like that. Because like you said, they're getting these late first rounders, second rounders, and blossoming them into the stars. But they hadn't had a number one pick like this. So I was really happy
give me a break, okay? About San Antonio not having lucky picks. You know, you get David Robinson, then you turn around and get Tim Duncan. Give me a break.
That was 20 years ago, man.
These guys have been good, and they've also been lucky. And you can't compromise on how good they are. Another thing, they're the only game in town. And I think that helps out their system because they don't have, and then obviously you have Greg Popovich, who has been a mentor, a genius, has done it in his own way. But man, that whole San Antonio thing, man, it doesn't irk me. I'm not a hater. I'm a congratulator when it comes to that. But I also look at Tim Duncan, and I told him, it must have been about 3 or 4 years ago, I saw Tim Duncan going on the court, and that was when the Celtics had a opportunity to get the first pick in the draft with Rick Pitino. Tim Duncan walks on the court, and I tell Tim Duncan, I said, there you go. There go 3 or 4 of my damn rings right there because you didn't come here. And he looked at me, he just started laughing, but it was like, but I love what San Antonio brings to the floor and what they have. But it just seems so unusual that you guys could go through that ugly stretch the way you did, and the damn coin comes up San Antonio again.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how to explain it. Serendipity is what we've heard a few people say. It's hard to fathom that you get in those 3 years where you have 3, franchise changing players and you come up with the number 1 pick. I can't explain it, but if you look at the last 20 years or so, I think Cleveland's had 3 number 1 picks.
Yeah.
There have been other teams that have had multiple number 1 picks. Maybe it wasn't a generational player, but they had their opportunities to turn their franchises around, and you see a lot of those teams still in the lottery. I mean, Houston had the 3rd pick last year and the 2nd pick the year before. They're still in the lottery. Detroit had the 1st pick 3 years ago, 10th pick last year. They're still in the lottery. I can say that if we had those same opportunities, we wouldn't have had that chance this year, because again, I feel like we do more with our players, and we really know how to draft as well.
He told me a story, Josue, which was so cool, and he had me laughing. He tells me, he's sitting there, Sean tells me how when they got the draft pick and it came up that they were number 1, he tells me his wife and his wife were upstairs. And how'd you go with that story, Sean? What did you say?
Yeah. Well, it was tension. I mean, it was high drama in this house. And when Charlotte came up at number 2, I picked my wife up. I picked her up. I was slapping her, and we were yelling something. I mean, it was just craziness. I mean, but everybody was around town. You saw the reaction videos. And we came downstairs, and the housekeeper was like, "Is everything okay?" We were fighting up there. It was nuts. It was a madhouse.
Just so you go ahead, you ask him a couple questions.
Well, you saw him a future Hall of Famer. I mean, guys, obviously you've seen the tape. We saw what happened last night. It was his draft. There was no surprise that he went number 1 overall. What about his game in particular? And of course, I'm sure there's a few things, but to you, what stands out the most about him that makes you say that's a Hall of Famer? If he goes through the San Antonio Spurs system, then that's a Hall of Famer one day.
Everything. On the offensive end of the floor, I know that, some people are enamored with him shooting the 3 ball and the way he handles it and the way he moves. I like the fact that he can facilitate. He can make his teammates better on that end of the floor. I love the fact that he dunks everything in the paint. If you watch enough of his highlights and his tape, every time he catches the ball anywhere near the basket, he's throwing it down. He's dunking. And I've said numerous times on our telecast that dunks beget dunks. That means if you dunk hard on somebody and you keep dunking the basketball, guys are going to get out of your way. No one wants to get dunked on in this league. You go in there and you mean business, it's going to create easier opportunities for you.
No one wants to be on Instagram and be on a reel.
Right. Yeah. 1 or 2 times you go in there, beginning of the game, you let yourself, you let everybody know that you're there, and everything you catch in the paint, you're going to throw it down. People are going to get out of the way. You're not going to have guys get so brave anymore trying to block shots. No one wants to, like you said, be on YouTube or Instagram. So he finishes everything in the paint, left hand, right hand. He's got great touch. He's got great footwork. And, I've heard also, people say, well, he's got to bulk up. But, Cedric, this is not the 80s or 90s anymore.
Yeah.
This isn't wrestling that happens to have a basketball on the court. That's not the way this game is played anymore. It's not physical, as physical. And so you can definitely get away with being, 220 or 230. And he's only 19 years old. He's probably going to put on 20 more pounds, even if he tries not to. And so his body type to me is going to be just fine. And that's just on the offensive end of the floor. On the defensive end of the floor, he blocks everything. He blocks everything. He can cover, a tremendous amount of space. I saw a video where, guards get in there in the paint, and you see them all the time where they use the rim to protect their shot. They play a little cat and mouse game. Am I going to put up on the left side? Am I going to put up on the right side of the rim to keep it away from the shot blocker? Well, big fella, he covered both sides of the rim. He's got so much range. There was a guard came in there trying to play this little cat and mouse game, and both sides of the rim were closed.
He's like, pick one.
Glass were closed.
Pick one.
That's like if you're playing pick and roll and if a guard gets in the paint, how is he going to get his shot off? He can space shooters on the floor and still block their shot. And so if you're an offensive player, that's in the back of your mind the whole time, because you're wondering, how am I going to get this shot off with this big dude lurking in the paint area?
One thing I see about San Antonio, and I've always thought this is the biggest thing, was the fact that your players, your best players, deferred to the coach, and the coach kind of deferred to the best players. And because of that, there was a hierarchy, and it went that way. And if he could yell at Tim Duncan, everybody else felt like, oh, well, you know what? I got to fall in line. Right. This kid seems like he's going to have the same kind of approach dealing with Greg Popovich.
I don't think there's any question. He's already indicated that he wants Pop to coach him. And what I mean by that is, coach him like Tony Parker got coached, and the way Timmy got coached. And Tony, we had this discussion a while back. We believe Tony was the all-time #1 whipping boy. And you got
it bad in the beginning, right?
Yeah. In the beginning, for sure. I mean, I told a story yesterday or a couple of days ago. Avery Johnson and I did an appearance, and the year I retired, I was calling games for the Spurs, but I would get to the arena early and work out. I was keeping myself in shape, shower, get dressed, and then I'd listen to them at halftime while I was calling the game, and then come out, call the rest of the game. And we were in the old Continental Airlines Arena, and I went in at halftime. And those walls are really thin. There was the players' locker room and the coaches' locker room. I went in the coaches' locker room, and I could listen to the halftime talk, and Pop was going off. I mean, when I say he was going off on Tim, Tony, and Manu. He was saying holy stuff. And he was challenging those guys like a drill sergeant. And people, I hear players say, I want to play for Pop. And I say, are you mentally tough enough? Because he's not going to kiss anybody's ass. It doesn't matter. He didn't do that with Timmy. If Timmy made a mistake, he was on him like he was the 12th guy on the team. And so, if the 12th guy sees that, you can't sit up there and complain. You know what I mean, Cedric? And I had one coach, Hank Egan, told me something really profound one time. He said, it's not hard to coach 1 through 5. It's harder to coach 6 through 12, 6 through 15, because those guys that sit on the bench, half of them, and you've been on teams like this, their guys are sitting there going, coach isn't playing me enough. And, coach is getting on me, coach is picking on me, and that's why he's not playing me. And you have guys there complaining on the end of the bench. And those guys are the guys that are unhappiest most of the time. The starters are starters. They're happy. But if you coach them all the same, these guys 6 through 15, they can't complain. If coach yells at Timmy Duncan, who's a Hall of Famer and the best player in the league, he can certainly get on your butt.
Wow. I mean, I just see the thing I do love about San Antonio is because it's the only game in town. The enthusiasm for your new player coming in is just, it's like off the roof. I mean, I'm looking at the Alamo. I'm looking at all these places, and you got his picture here and there, and it's like it's contagious right now, and it's almost fever pitch right now. And the kid hasn't even played one game yet.
Yeah,
they're already lining up at the airport for him, so they are.
Wow.
There's a big
prospect since LeBron James. I mean,
they're waiting for him to land today. When I first got here in '89, the players told me it's a players' town, and the fans love the players. They love them to death. That's why I'm still here. David's still here. Tim is here. Antonio Daniels is here. Manu's here. Tony goes back and forth between France and here. You have a lot of Ice is here. George Gervin's here. You have a lot of the players that played in the 70s and 80s that have made San Antonio their home, because it is a unique environment. You know, the people are tremendous, great people. They love their Spurs team, and they just always treat the players with a lot of respect in the community.
Well, you say that, and let me tell you this, and I'm looking at you right now. You tell George Gervin to put down some of that Mexican food. George Gervin is 300 pounds.
I'll let him know.
You're not Ice right now. He's a damn
that
iceberg
no
right
joke.
now. That's my guy. And that's one of the first, and the really funny thing about it, the first time I was in the league, my first game was in San Antonio, playing against the Spurs. I scored my first basket on George Gervin. He looks at me, he says, nice move, young fella. And then the next thing he said to me, too bad they got another end of the floor. It's like what do you think? And he went to work. I was like, I never seen nothing like that before.
Oh, I bet Ice was the best trash talker.
Yeah, he seemed like a talker. I don't know.
Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times, that's 10 times your first bet amount of bonus bets and up to $200. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to be, hitting the first home run. All in the app that's safe, secure, it's super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/Boston and get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball.
Speaking of dynasties, sorry, go ahead, Max. No, I'm thinking of the San Antonio's dynasties. I'm thinking of how many times they ran it back and all those championships. And honestly, this is the very, very beginning. But I'm looking at another team that's trying to stretch out their last run, and that's the Golden State Warriors. And I'm wondering, what do you think about this trade that just went down? Them trading for, trading away Poole, getting someone like Chris Paul in the mix. I mean, Max and I, we haven't talked much about the trades that's gone down this week, so I guess we can start there. But I would love to hear your take on it, about the Golden State Warriors acquiring Chris Paul, and what does that mean for their championship window, so to speak, with obviously Draymond Green still a question mark at this point. But how do you think that looks right now from the outside?
I like it, actually. I do like it for them. I think you can put him on the floor with Steph Curry, with Klay Thompson, with Draymond Green, because Klay Thompson, he can guard the three position.
Yeah,
big enough where he can guard small forwards. And again, this isn't the 80s and 90s where every small forward that I guarded in the early 90s posted up. They went to the low block on you, right? So that's not happening anymore. So Klay Thompson can get away at that three spot if you decide to do that. And Chris Paul is a terrific facilitator. He's a terrific passer, and he's got this high basketball IQ. And so, you could run him out there. I heard a discussion earlier today, said, well, he's going to be a backup to Curry, and how he's going to, maybe he is. We'll see how Golden State decides to play him. But you can put him on the court with Steph Curry at the same time, because Steph also does a great job moving without the basketball.
Yeah.
He's not always a guy who's coming off pick and rolls and making plays. He moves well without the ball. And so if he gets that crack of daylight, he's moving well and he's open, Chris Paul is the man to get him the ball. So you have, both Chris Paul and Draymond Green that are great passers and that can feed him, and Klay Thompson. And not only that, Chris Paul, in his prime, he's not in his prime anymore, but to me, when I saw him early, he was one of the best point guard defenders I had ever seen. And so he can still get it done enough or adequately on the defensive end of the floor to help them, and maybe better defensively than Jordan Poole is, because again, he has high basketball IQ and he knows the game. So to me, I think the Warriors got better with that move.
Looking from the outside, looking in, how did you feel about the Celtics making the trade with Marcus Smart?
That was, I'm mixed on that one, to be honest with you, because
Really?
yeah, I'm mixed.
I
Because
think Max is too. We haven't spoken about it, but go ahead.
yeah, you guys are. I feel like the Celtics. You guys are guard heavy. Malcolm Brogdon, I thought was a tremendous pickup for you. I know Marcus Smart's a great defender, but I'm wondering if there's other things that go along with him in the locker room or between the head coach. That it was my initial thought process. And the second part of that was, I've seen Kristaps Porzingis play really well here. I've seen him, destroy us more than a few times. And I feel like if he's in the right system and the right organization with players around him that he respects and that are going to push him, and that he feels like he's a part of it, he can be an incredibly valuable asset, because he can shoot it. He can play with his back to the basket. He can play in the paint a little bit. And so, I think it's going to take the right situation for him. And we've seen players throughout the years that have taken a while to find the right home. They've moved on to 2 or 3 teams, and then they finally find a place where they're comfortable. And if that's the situation in Boston, then Porzingis can be a real weapon for you guys.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that for sure, because I just think he checks a lot of the boxes for the Celtics in terms of interior score. I mean, even though that's not a big part of the NBA, he can do that for you. He can protect the rim. He can stretch the floor with his 3-point shot. I mean, it fits the Celtics system. Right. It just surprised a lot of Celtics fans here, because of the initial report was all about Brogdon going to the Clippers. And once that fell through, it just seemed like the type of deal where Brad Stevens said, look, I want to get this guy, and I can't let this fall through. And in that final hour right before midnight, because of that deadline, Porzingis' contract extension deadline, he was pushed against it. He was up against the clock, and he made that decision. And look, there's got to be something to be said about that. I think it shows a lot of guts for Brad Stevens to pull this move, which is easily the most controversial trade he's made since he got the job. Yeah,
but Brad Stevens, I think he's proven himself. I think he's proven to everybody that he knows exactly what he's doing. He's extremely competent. Fans get caught up in second guessing, pretty much every move. But when you look at a guy like Brad Stevens, I mean, I think if people in Boston are upset, I think you just take a deep breath and relax for a second, because the man knows what he's doing. And obviously he's on the inside, and he's got firsthand knowledge of what's best for his team.
You know what? I'm going to go back in the pass machine. You made me upset when you start talking about Duncan, because I used to guard Dr. J. Yeah, I was getting out the way. I had to get out the way, Sean, because when he's coming, I didn't want to be on some kid's poster in his bedroom with my head on my head.
That's Cedric Maxwell. Yeah.
But I do want to ask you, I want you to take us back to what I think, and a lot of people in San Antonio feel, was one of the greatest shots in the NBA. When you made your shot where your toes, your back of your heels were almost out of bounds. Run us through that play and tell us a little bit about it, because people, I'm sure in San Antonio, still walk up to you right now and talk about that shot.
Yeah, I get it. I get it all the time. I could be in the store. I can be at the gas station. I can be wherever. It doesn't matter. I hear about it, 2, 3, 4, 5 times a month sometimes. And people tell me where they were when I made that shot. And the thing about it is, you're not a San Antonio fan, you kind of don't understand the whole history behind that, because you go back to 89, 90, we had a good team, made it to the second round, lost to Portland in 7 games in Portland, had them at their place. We had them beaten, would have gone to the Western Conference Finals, and we playing the Phoenix Suns, and we were 4-0 against them that year. So we were thinking we were going to the finals. That was my rookie year. Second year, we get upset in the first round by Golden State. Third year, David Robinson's hurt. We get swept by the Phoenix Suns in the first round. Fourth year, Charles Barkley hit the shot on us, and we lose in 6. My 6th year in the league, we had the best record in the league. Cedric played the Houston Rockets 6 times during the regular season, beat them 5 out of 6. Beat them 5 out of 6, beat them in an exhibition game. We'd beaten them 6 out of 7 times that season, and lost to them in the Western Conference Finals when the team went crazy. We had the best record in the league. Next year, we had the best record in the league, got upset by Utah in the second round. Then we had a little downturn. We got Timmy Duncan
Well, hold on, real quick, Sean. See, Celtics fans, it's not as bad. You know what I mean? They like to complain and cry. They're like,
Right.
it could be a lot worse for a lot longer.
Yeah. So we found ways to continually let our fans down, and because we had these high expectations, and so in that series again, now we had the best record in the league that year, and Portland had outplayed us in game one. They could have won game one. We just eked that one out, and then they were thoroughly outplaying us again in game two. But we made a comeback. But you could feel it in the air where people were like, okay, here we go again. We go again. We get our expectations, we get our hopes up, and this team's going to let us down again. And so I think when I made that shot, we all, as a team, we said, all right, this is our time. And then the fans were like, hey, we're going to really do it this time. We are going to get over the hump. And so that's why I still have people come up to me all the time. And it's like, I feel like I've met everybody in the arena because everybody tells me their reaction.
See, like, what kills me about shots like that is the fact that everybody you meet says that they were there. You couldn't have been there, dude. You're 5 years old. You couldn't have been there. Come on, give me a break.
You watch that on TV. Don't say that. Right.
Well, we feel so honored. We're not gonna hold you. We won't let you go because you're probably tired from your golf game you told us about. But man,
it's 100 out there, right?
A pleasure joining us because we wanted to hear a little bit about the Superman which is coming to San Antonio, and you've enlightened us so well. And again, those words still hang they come in my ear all the time. When I was talking to you that day, you said, if in fact, and he goes to another team, he is going to be really good. But if he comes to San Antonio, he might be the best of all time. And that stuck with me. And that's why I wanted to talk to you. And I do appreciate your time, your patience with me.
I firmly believe that. And I'm excited. It's one of the first times in a long time that I can't wait for the season to start. So I'm already ready.
All right, well, Sean, before we let you go, real quick, give me your favorite Max story, because I don't always get this perspective from someone who could give me a good Max story that's not told by Max.
I can't give you a good Max story. All I can say is, like I said earlier, I mean, he was my nemesis, and he was always, weren't you always waving the towel and
that was ML Carr. I wasn't doing that.
Oh, that was ML Carr was waving the towel.
You always get that. I love it.
No, he was, the Celtics, I just drove me crazy. Larry Bird, man, couldn't stand that man. Kevin McHale was all right. And, it's crazy when you get now, when you meet everybody and you get to know people. And, I can't call Cedric cornbread, because I know that was your nickname.
No, you can. Yes, you
can.
And
then, you meet Dan. Yeah, I met and talked to Danny Ainge a lot. And then, Kevin McHale, got a chance to talk with him a few times, and just all like really cool dudes. You know what I mean? And so my hate wasn't justified. It was just that, when you're beating my Sixers, that was bothering me. But other than that, I appreciate all those guys. A lot of good players, a lot of good people have gone through that organization.
Yeah, last week
thank you again, man.
We had a Celtics beat writer, Gary Washburn, on, right, for the Boston Globe, and he same type of energy, because he grew up a Lakers fan, grew up in California watching Max. And he's like, man, I couldn't stand you guys. He always reminds Max of that. So I love hearing that. Sean, I appreciate it. Again, thanks for coming on, man. Spurs legend, Spurs champion, Sean Elliott, joining us here on the Cedric Maxwell podcast. Thanks again, man.